Hey guys, what's up? It's Glavian, and back around the end of 2018, I remember running around Zoldazar, which is the end game horde capital in the Battle for Azeroth expansion, and I remember thinking to myself, God damn, this zone is pretty as fuck. Everything here looks so good. And I also remember simultaneously feeling, but this is shallow. Something about this just isn't as exciting. Something about this just isn't as fun as it used to be. And, having had take such a long hiatus from World of Warcraft and gaming in general, I mean, it's pretty normal for people who have no interest in games or who don't really play games a lot to think that there is a correlation between high graphical fidelity and a game being good. And so, having had taken a break from gaming for such a long time and coming back and not really thinking about games for the 5 years before that, and experiencing for really the first time for me, the experience of being in a game that is super gorgeous and not having fun was new and baffling to me. And it was since then, the past few years, that I've been thinking so much about that experience. And, I've gotten much more back into gaming since then. And I've been thinking, what the fuck was up with that experience? Because it was new for me. It was the first time that happened. And, it reminds me of when I was a teenager and I used to, produce some music for fun. And one thing they always said about producing and mixing music is that you cannot polish a turd. And while I disagree with that statement, I think you can polish a turd, but it will still just be a turd. I think that's exactly what happened with World of Warcraft. And so in comes this new Dragonflight leak. And I need to make that very clear. This is a leak. This is speculative. We're going to find out on the 16th of April. But there has been a leak that has come out for the new World of Warcraft expansion called World of Warcraft Dragonflight. And I actually think it's probably true. And the reason why is because, well, it seems that Blizzard has purchased some domains with the name, and that there has been some JavaScript that has been found on some Blizzard websites with the name Dragonflight, as well as that picture you might have seen going around of some artwork on an office desk of the Dragonflight expansion. I think it might be true. Now, it's possible that it's not. It's possible that it's just a red herring, but it might be. And I actually think it is. And so I need to, preface the rest of this video by saying that everything I'm about to say is from a leak and is speculative. Okay, so the first things I want to do are talk about the things from the leak. And I'm going to be, referencing the same leak that Bellular referenced and that Willie referenced. And I'm going to be mentioning the things that I think are actually rather good about the leak, if they were true. Now, the first thing is that it was leaked that the WoW Dragonflight upcoming expansion might have player housing. Now, I didn't even think I liked player housing literally until last night, because I am not very aesthetically driven, especially visually. And so I'm not the type of person who will decorate. I'm not the type of person who will go out of my way to make things look nice. If you look at my wallpaper on my computer right now, it's literally just black. Like, it's just a black wallpaper, nothing else. And so this is kind of just the way I am, and it's the way I've been for a while. And you can kind of see it in my content. You see how much editing I put into these? You get my point. And so I didn't think I liked player housing until yesterday when I logged into Final Fantasy XIV. And someone from my free company said, hey, y'all want to hang out in my apartment? I'm like, what? This game has apartments? I thought it only had houses. They're like, nope, it has apartments. I'm like, fuck yeah, I want to hang out at your apartment. And so I'm like, how do I get there? They're like, oh, just right click my name on your friends list and teleport to a state. And I did. And we, got to their apartment. It was me and a couple other people from our free company. And their apartment was so nice. And I remember looking around asking, oh, what's this? What's this? How do you get that? This is so cool. And there was Endwalker music playing, and it was so emotional. And it was so fun. And then they had a hot tub. And I remember getting in the hot tub and we all kind of sat around and chit chatted. And I had so much fun doing that. And that made me realize that player housing isn't just to, collect pretty shinies and to put pretty shinies in a room. No, player housing also facilitates, a social experience that you don't always get without player housing. And it was so fun for me. And so now I'm a huge fan. So if it's true that Dragonflight will have player housing and they do it right, kind of like how Final Fantasy XIV does it, then I'm completely on board with that. Now, the second thing from that leak that I think would be really good for that game, for World of Warcraft, is the fact that they announced that they will be getting, or not announced, I'm sorry, it's been speculated that they won't have leveling and that level cap will remain at level 60. And the reason why I think this is so good is because the thing that I really hated the most about Shadowlands, leveling through it, was feeling forced to have to go through the Shadowlands campaign before I could do anything else that I wanted. But if, you can have the expansion, purchase the Dragonflight expansion, log in, and now do whatever the fuck you want, whether you want to do the story, whether you want to do raiding content, whether you want to do PvP content, whatever you want to do, you should be able to have the option to do whatever you want, kind of like how Final Fantasy is. If you want to do the MSQ, go for it. Excuse me. If you want to go to the Golden Saucer, go for it. If you want to level professions, go for it. And just the fact that it gives you options and that autonomy makes games so much more fun because no longer do you have to feel forced to do anything, you know? And also with Final Fantasy, usually in old school MMOs such as vanilla WoW, classic WoW, old school RuneScape, what I would do is I would find myself staring at my experience bar and getting excited about the little ticks each time I get some experience. And I'm anticipating the next level. And then when I level up, it feels really good. And then the cycle continues. And with each level, it gets harder and harder and longer and longer. And although you do get some nice dopamine wahoos out of that, in the long run, I think that'll eventually burn you out. And that treadmill, that, leveling treadmill ends up being really grindy. And although it could be fun for a while, I don't think it lasts forever. Now, with Final Fantasy, I'm finding that I'm actually hoping that I don't level. Every time I'm level, I'm like, oh, fuck, I leveled. And the reason why I feel that way is because I'm having so much fun doing the MSQ. I'm having so much fun going quest to quest to quest and thinking, oh, what's the next quest going to be? Oh, what's the next quest going to be about? What's the next quest? And like each one is its own little cliffhanger. And I'm having a lot of fun doing that. And so because I got recommended to do my job quests every 5 levels, I get disrupted from the MSQ and I have to go do my job quest. I'm like, oh my God, do I have to? And it's not even because the job quests are bad. It's because I'm left at a cliffhanger in the MSQ and I want to keep it going, So it's almost like the opposite of the experience that I'm used to having from old school MMOs where, I'm grinding levels. Here, each time I level, I'm like, oh my God, I leveled. I'm one step closer to having to do my job quest. And so it's kind of funny how that plays out. And I'm loving this experience. I think it's really refreshing. I think it's really fun. Now, so for World of Warcraft to, get rid of that experience where you're like just grinding out levels just to grind them out, and in order to do the content that you want to do, I think would be a good thing for the game. Now, the last thing that I really like about this leak was that it's speculated that there's going to be 4 new classes and that each new class is only going to have 1 spec. Now, I think this is actually going to be a good thing. If you look at Final Fantasy XIV, and I'm pretty new to the game, but it appears to me so far that each class only has 1 spec. Each class is its own thing. You're not, there's no like talent tree specs that there is in World of Warcraft in Final Fantasy XIV. And it appears to me that what this does is it allows Final Fantasy to facilitate better class design, more balanced class design, and it allows classes to be viable. There's just a wider range of classes that would be considered quote unquote viable by people who like playing by the meta. I don't. But for those people, it seems to be the case. And so I think having just 1 spec for all the new classes is going to help Blizzard balance the game better. And it seems to me that, the last class that they added in was the Demon Hunter, and that only had 2 specs. And that having 3 specs or 4 specs per class was kind of a relic from the past that has been really difficult for Blizzard to balance, in the recent years. Okay, so now that I've covered all the things that I think are good about the Dragonflight leak, why am I still skeptical? Why am I still, dubious about the quality of the upcoming expansion or the potential upcoming expansion? And the reason why that is because in the leak, there have been no mentions whatsoever of the systems of the game. And so I hope come April 16th, we get some more insight into that. But if there's going to be any weird rep grinds that are mandatory, any weird Torghast sort of mechanics that are mandatory. Sorry, I'm back. My phone started ringing in the middle of the video. So like I was saying, if there's any weird grinds like Soul Ash grinds or grinds like Azerite power or anything like that that you're going to have to do before you could do the content that you actually want to do, then I'm not interested. And for me, that's the deal breaker. Because to have a game where you're dependent on grinds and on systems to keep players playing instead of the things that really matter, such as one content, such as story content, raid content, any sorts of content, or a social experience that keeps you logging in to be able to hang out with people, kind of like I experienced in Final Fantasy yesterday with the housing system. If they're going to depend on systems alone to extend your game time at the expense of content and at the expense of a good social experience, then for me, that is the deal breaker. I am not interested. All the other things are nice, and Blizzard has had a history in the past few years of hyping up a game with good marketing, with good cinematics, and even with like the BlizzCon that they had where they announced Shadowlands. Ian came out and he said, well, classes are going to have a return to form, and you're not going to have a situation where each spec is completely its own thing. What we're going to do is we're going to return back to having a base class and having each spec being a spin-off of the main class. And, this excited me because the way he said it was like, okay, we're going to go back on what we did wrong and start doing what worked and what was right. But that's not exactly how it played out in Shadow. And so the way that they're PR trained and the way that they do their marketing really creates a lot of hype for the expansions. Shadowlands, when it came out, was the most selling PC game of all time for a little while until Cyberpunk dropped. And, we all know how Shadowlands played out. And so they have this history of overly hyping up a game and not delivering. And fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And I just want to wrap up this video by saying that while preparing for this video, I noticed that for every good point I mentioned about the Dragonflight leak, for each good point, I ended up saying like Final Fantasy. I said housing like Final Fantasy. I said, one spec per class like Final Fantasy. You see what I'm saying? And so this has me wondering, have I just converted? Am I just a Final Fantasy player now? Am I the literal meme of have you heard a Final Fantasy, the critically acclaimed Final Fantasy, with a free trial all the way up to Heaven's Word? Is that me now? That very well might just be the case. And that's all I had to say for this video. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.